good evening, and welcome to the Midnight Spook Show here on the Horror Metal channel. I'm Hellhound, and recently I did a tag video called the Ultimate Dracula Tag, created by Sean Erschen. Yeah, the Ultimate Dracula Tag, which he actually made like 2 years ago, I think. 2 years ago almost. And I was in the hospital at the time, so I kind of missed it. But I recently discovered that he made that video, and so I made my response to that one. So check it out. And shortly after I made that video, I also realized that he also made the Ultimate Frankenstein Tag shortly after that one. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make a response to that. So, pretty cool. Some pretty interesting questions, and let's go and get started. That's right. Like I said, this is the Ultimate Frankenstein Tag, created by Sean Erschen. Alright, so question number 1 is, who is the best actor to portray Frankenstein's monster? Well, that's an easy one for me. The very obvious choice, which is Boris Karloff, who of course played him in the first 3 Universal movies, the Universal classics from the early 30s. Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein. I think he did a great job. And he's so iconic and so well known, and for a good reason, because he was just awesome. We get to see lots of different sides to his character. He could play him as just a fierce, violent brute, or kind of a sympathetic, kind of childlike, innocent creature as well, who doesn't really mean any harm, just kind of acting on instinct and interacting with the world when nobody understands him. And sometimes it makes him angry, and he ends up getting violent. So yeah, we see a lot of different characteristics, and Boris Karloff just nailed it across the board with that. So he's my favorite, though again, very obvious choice, but I think he's still the best. Still holds up today. His performance, which was great. All right, question number 2: which film was the best adaptation of Mary Shelley's novel? The original novel by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus? Well, if you mean the most faithful adaptation that's closest to the book and, follows the book the most faithful one I've ever seen is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1994 with Robert De Niro playing the monster. I think that this was a pretty good movie. I think it's kind of underrated. But this is probably the most faithful adaptation, at least that I've seen. But more on that later. They did deviate from the novel in a few areas. They added some new things. They took a lot of liberties with it. But it follows the novel pretty closely for the most part. If there's a more faithful adaptation out there, I probably haven't seen it. But I think the best adaptation is, of course, the original 1931 classic with Boris Karloff that I already mentioned. Frankenstein, the Universal black and white film, which still holds up today. It's just amazing. So I think that's the best adaptation of the actual novel. There are other great Frankenstein movies, but when it comes to the ones that follow, that they're based on the novel, I think that's the best. And Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1994 is the closest. But yeah, all right. Next question. Question number 3. What is your favorite sequel or spin-off of Frankenstein? Definitely Bride of Frankenstein. I love this movie. It's an excellent sequel, and I think it's even better than the first one by a hair. They're both great, but I think this one's even better. Boris Karloff, of course, returns as the monster. Colin Clive returns as Dr. Henry Frankenstein. He was renamed Henry Frankenstein, unlike the novel where he's called Victor Frankenstein. Here he's Henry Frankenstein. He returns. And of course, there's the new character, the new monster, the Bride of Frankenstein herself, who makes an appearance towards the end. Very, very good movie. Frankenstein's monster actually talks quite a bit in this one. He learns how to speak, human language, and I think that was a great idea. Very, very good movie. Very well done. And that's probably my favorite Frankenstein movie. Because, again, like I said, I think it tops the original by a little bit. All right, question number 4. What is the worst adaptation of Frankenstein? Well, this one's not really an adaptation of the novel per se, but I think the worst movie featuring Frankenstein's monster is probably Dracula versus Frankenstein from 1971, I believe it was, which was also Lon Chaney Jr.'s last film, sadly. So, Yeah. It kind of sucks that was his swan song or whatever. I think J. Carroll Naish from House of Frankenstein was in it as well. I think it might have been his last movie too, if I remember correctly. They were both in it. And but they, I like them both a lot, but they weren't quite enough to save that because it's a piece of crap. I think Dracula had like a goatee, and Frankenstein's monsters look like crap. What a horrible makeup job! And the movie's too dark; you can barely see what's going on, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible. Don't bother with it. I don't recommend it at all. All right, question number 5: who is the best actor to portray Dr. Victor Frankenstein? Now, as much as I love Peter Cushing, he was great as well, and he played the character probably more than any other actor. He played him a lot more. We got to see a lot of different iterations of his character. Sometimes he was a violent, evil villain. Other times he was a little more benevolent and kind of a hero in a way, not as much as a villain. So we're gonna see him play a lot of different versions of that character, which was really cool. He did a great job, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to go with Colin Clive, again, from these two. Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. I think he was the best Dr. Frankenstein, even though he was renamed Henry instead of Victor, like I said. He was just awesome. Something about him, like he was just, so obsessed with his work. That's all he cared about. Like he was just so, like, focused on that. That's, what drove him. And he had these really intense, like, eyes that, he would just kind of stare into the camera, and like he just, I don't know, his voice and everything, he just, I don't know, something about him was just fascinating. He died really young. He was taken from us way too soon. I would have loved to have seen more movies with him in it. I would have loved to see him continue as Dr. Henry Frankenstein throughout the rest of the Universal Frankenstein series, which is really a shame that it didn't happen that way, because Colin Clive was just awesome. He was a great actor, and he was gone way too soon. So he's my favorite actor to play Dr. Henry Frankenstein. Although Peter Cushing comes very close. He'd definitely be my second favorite. Also, like Kenneth Branagh wasn't bad in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein that I already talked about. He also directed the film too, and he played the good doctor as well. I didn't think he was bad. He was pretty close to the novel, obviously. All right, so number 6. The Universal Frankenstein monster versus the Hammer horror Frankenstein monster. Who would win in a fight? Now, the thing about that is, the Universal version of the monster was in all of the Universal films, whereas the Hammer version, the Hammer Frankenstein series, it was a different monster every time. In every movie, it was a different monster. And really, the true monster of that series was Dr. Frankenstein himself. He was the true villain. They kind of focused more on him, whereas the Universal series focused on the monster. So I'm kind of glad they did that to kind of differentiate it, go in a different direction, do something different. But I'm sure this question, what he means is, the original Boris Karloff Frankenstein from the classic Universal series versus Christopher Lee's version of the character in the first Hammer horror Frankenstein movie, Curse of Frankenstein. Christopher Lee's creature, as he's called in this film, as opposed to a monster, which is referred to in the Universal films. He was only in this one movie, and I'm pretty sure that's what Sean means. Is the Universal Frankenstein versus the one seen in Curse of Frankenstein. Now, who'd win in a fight? It's a close one. They're both very strong and very vicious. But I think I'm gonna go with the Universal Frankenstein. He seemed maybe a little stronger, maybe a little more invulnerable in a lot of ways. But I don't know. The Christopher Lee version of the creature seen in Curse of Frankenstein was also pretty vicious as well, very fierce and as well, very ravenous and just pretty brutal. I kind of think that the Boris Karloff version might have been a little smarter too. At least as seen in Bride of Frankenstein. He was clearly capable of speech, as seen in that movie, like I pointed out earlier. So I think he might have been maybe a little bit more intelligent, so he might have outsmarted the Curse of Frankenstein version of the character a little bit. But it'd be a close one. But I'll go with the Universal version, originated by Boris Karloff. He didn't return for all the sequels. They had various different actors playing him in the other movies. Alright, question number 7. What is the best non-horror appearance of Frankenstein's monster? Well, I'm definitely going to have to go with a comedy, and that's going to be Young Frankenstein, of course. This is the only correct answer, in my opinion. Yeah, it's a non-horror version of the character. It's a straight-up comedy, a parody. It's a spoof of the Frankenstein movies, and it spoofs it very, very, very well. This movie's hilarious. I love it. Mel Brooks is a genius. He always does great. I love all his parodies, especially this one, and of course Dracula Dead and Loving It, like I mentioned in the Ultimate Dracula tag, and Spaceballs, which is a spoof of the Star Wars movies. Yeah, he always does great. He's always his movies are always really funny. Gene Wilder is always a riot. Yeah, of course Peter Boyle, who plays the monster, is really funny, and Marty Feldman, who plays Igor, is also really, really funny. Yeah, very, very funny movie, and by far my favorite non-horror appearance of Frankenstein's monster, for the reasons I already said. I need to review all these movies, by the way. I haven't done that yet. I've talked about them a lot on my channel, but I haven't given like each movie their own individual video, which I need to do. Alright, question number 8. In Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which was the final film in the Universal series, which featured Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, and the Wolfman, and of course the comedy duo Abbott and Costello, who are always hilarious. Yeah, in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, were you happy with Glenn Strange playing the monster, or would you have preferred Boris Karloff to return? Well, I definitely would have preferred Boris Karloff to return, because he was just awesome. He was my favorite Frankenstein's monster, like I said. And it would have been great to see Boris Karloff's Frankenstein along with Bela Lugosi's Dracula and Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman. That would have been really cool to have them all three in the same movie. So yeah, definitely would have wanted Karloff to return. However, I do think Glenn Strange was really good too. He might be my second favorite actor to play Frankenstein's monster in the Universal series. Lon Chaney Jr. and Bela Lugosi were also pretty good, but I think Glenn Strange was almost as good as Boris Karloff. Though he wasn't really in his three appearances, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and then this one, Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. He wasn't really in them very much. He didn't have a lot of screen time. He didn't really have a lot to do. But he did actually talk in this one. Didn't see a talking Frankenstein very often in the series. Of course, in Bride of Frankenstein we did, like I said earlier, and in this one he talks quite a bit. And he's kind of a servant, kind of a henchman of Count Dracula, which I thought that was kind of an interesting spin, an interesting take on the character. But yeah, anyway, I would have preferred Boris Karloff to return, but I think Glenn Strange did a good job too. I like his version of Frankenstein's monster as well. Definitely. Alright, question number 9. Who was the only actor to portray Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, the Mummy, and the Wolfman? Oh, that's a no-brainer. It's definitely Lon Chaney Jr. He played Frankenstein's monster in Ghost of Frankenstein, which is the 4th film in the Universal series. Then he played Dracula in Son of Dracula, the 3rd film of the Dracula Universal series. Then he played the Mummy, Karis, in The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, and The Mummy's Curse, which were the last 3 entries in the Universal Mummy series. It was previously played by Tom Tyler, who played the Mummy and Karis in The Mummy's Hand. And of course, he also played the Wolfman in all the movies featuring that character in the Universal series. He was the only actor to play the Wolfman throughout the Universal classics. So yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. definitely, and he was a great actor. He's it's really cool they played all 4 monsters. Yeah, very, very impressive there. Alright, so anyway, let's move on. Question number 10, the final question. What are your thoughts on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1994? We already talked about it a little bit already in this video, but yeah, basically, as I said before, it's not quite as bad as everybody says. It's not as widely, it's not quite as praised as Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, which I think this was, I think that's kind of where they got the idea to, Bram Stoker's Dracula came out in 1992, and they said, oh, well, let's make a really faithful adaptation of Mary Shelley's novel, Frankenstein, just kind of akin to the Bram Stoker's Dracula movie. yeah, so it's not quite as good as that one, but I think it's better. Again, it's better than most people say. I don't think it's bad. I didn't think Robert De Niro was a bad Frankenstein's monster. It's kind of an odd choice when you think about it. But he's a great actor. He can, he can pretty much pull off pretty much any role, and it's kind of interesting seeing him play this character. And as I said, Kenneth Branagh wasn't bad. Yeah, there are a lot of deviations from the novel. The main one being that. In the novel, they talked about making a mate for the monster, kind of a bride of Frankenstein, I guess, or bride of Frankenstein's monster, I should say. And they never actually did it in the novel. In this movie, they actually do it, and it's spoiler alert. It's after Dr. Frankenstein's fiance or wife or whatever gets killed by Frankenstein's monster, I believe, and is reanimated as that character, the bride of Frankenstein's monster, or whatever, a female, monster counterpart, whatever, played by, as I said, Helena Bonham Carter. Yeah, it didn't happen. I don't think that happened in the novel. It's been a long time since I read it, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't recall that ever actually happening. And in the movie, they went all the way with it. It's a little done in a slightly disturbing way too. It's a pretty shocking movie. It's kind of a downer, It's a very dark movie, and yeah, I don't think it's too bad. Again, I like it better than most people do. But yeah, well, that about covers it, guys. All right, well, this has been the Ultimate Frankenstein tag, created by Sean Erschen. I'm Hellhound, and I'm not going to tag anybody. I'm just going to leave it open for anybody who wants to do it. I got 2 other videos that I'm still waiting on a few people to make responses to, and that's my top 10 horror subgenres tag video, which a lot of people have already made a response to already, and there's a few others that are coming soon, as well as the Godzilla tag, which was a collaboration between myself and Sean Erschen. That was the last video I did, so check that out if you're a Godzilla fan. So yeah, on this one, I'm not going to tag anybody, just anybody who wants to do it, feel free, or leave your answers in the comments below. Check these movies out. If you haven't seen any of them, Frankenstein's great. It's a great story. Great movies. The Universal series was great. The Hammer horror series was great. There's been several other adaptions of the novel and movies featuring the character that were also really, really cool. And I'll have to talk more about those on my channel in the future. Alright guys, I'm Hellhound. Thank you for watching the Horror Metal channel. This has been the Midnight Spook Show. Until next time, later.